Well, Chuck, do we want to go ahead and get started? I can keep admitting folks as as they sign in, but I just wanted to say hi to everyone first and introduce myself. If you haven't met me, I'm Jamieson Bunn. I'm the Director of Development at COTS. We are hosting today's town hall because of course, we can't do traditional events right now, which means we can't see you in person and tell you about our work. So we envisioned this town hall and the one in November as kind of a way to connect a little bit more personally with all of you and give you a chance to ask questions, to tell you about what we're seeing in 2020 at COTS, which is just a crazy year for everybody. So I will be prompting Chuck with a few questions. He'll be talking about our financial model, the business of our work here, and how we've adapted to change this year. And then I'll also give space for you to ask questions as well. And if you have a question while Chuck is speaking, either raise your hand or you can type your question in the chat, and I'll be monitoring that so that you can pose a question, and then I'll stop when Chuck has a moment, and we'll be able to continue the conversation that way. So welcome everybody, and thank you for being with us. We are so excited to be able to speak with you finally. And let me introduce Chuck. So of course, as you know, Chuck Fernandez is our CEO here at COTS. He's been with us for a couple of years now. I think it's October is your second year anniversary, isn't that right?
It is, Jamieson. So do you want me to jump in and start, Jamieson?
Yes, why don't you introduce yourself and then we can kind of launch into it.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for attending our virtual town hall. As Jamieson said, I'm Chuck Fernandez, I'm the CEO. I actually started October of 2018, so I'm right at my second year anniversary, and it's been wonderful. Jamieson and I were talking before the town hall, and we thought probably one of the biggest things on your mind right now is, from a business perspective, what is COTS doing differently today because of COVID and the consequences of COVID? And so why don't we start there? Let me start to answer that question. I'm going to answer it at a very high level so that I can allow room for a lot of questions and comments, and we can just have a conversation. So what are we doing to address COVID? What are we doing that's so different with our business model? Two things. One is we know we can't do this work alone. We just simply can't. We know that homelessness is going to increase given the economy, the recession, the unemployment. And so we're really focused on strengthening our partnerships and collaborations in the community. For example, every Monday we have a meeting at 1 o'clock where the Petaluma Police Department, Petaluma Fire, if they can join us, Petaluma Health Center, the Downtown Streets team, the City Manager's Office, and COTS all meet via Zoom to talk about what's happening in the community around homelessness and the encampments. What are the hotspots? What does the police department need to address? What can we address? What can COTS address? We're also partnering with the Petaluma Family Therapy and the Legal Aid of Sonoma County to provide services to our clients. We also have a management and leadership cohort training program that's 12 months long. We're in our 6th month, and we're partnering with Catholic Charities to nurture and groom and grow leaders for tomorrow. We know if we're going to be in this homeless arena for a while, we have to develop leadership capacity. So that's what we're doing as far as so differently with COVID. I think the second thing that we're doing that's really important is we're strengthening our organization. What we're doing is we're preparing for opportunity. I know that sounds a little odd. Let me explain. We know that with the recession, unemployment, with COVID, that sadly there's going to be some nonprofits that aren't going to make it. It's just the way it is. We know businesses aren't going to make it. We know probably nonprofits aren't going to make it. And so what we're doing is we're strengthening our organizations. We know that the way we do business today is not the way we're going to do business tomorrow. So one way we're doing that is we're looking at our strategic plan and how can we strengthen our strategic plan? How can we make sure that we're relevant for today and tomorrow? We know, for example, diversity is important. And so we want to make sure that diversity is one of the values that we have in our strategic plan. We know that succession planning is important. That's a form of risk management. We need to make sure that we minimize disruption in our business. And so who can step forward in the case of an emergency? We're also taking a systems approach to strategic plan, much like the human body, and we've got Dr. Posikia here, that's comprised of a lot of different systems. Businesses are also comprised of a lot of different systems. And so we want to make sure that we're paying attention to each system so that we're as strong as we possibly can to get ready for when they present it. So that's a lot I just shared. So let me just pause and open it up to questions. I know you probably have questions around our budget, maybe our paycheck protection program, all that type of stuff around the business of COTS. So let me just pause.
And Chuck, I want to, before we ask some questions, I also just wanted to go back to what you were saying around the collaborations and maybe give a little bit of an anecdote around that. I was speaking with Robin Phoenix, our shelter services manager, a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about that, the Monday meeting that you mentioned around COTS with the Petaluma Police Department. The Petaluma Valley Hospital has some representatives there, and we're writing it up for our fall newsletter. So she was telling me the story of one particular encampment on Petaluma Boulevard where this couple was living in. They nicknamed them the archaeologists because they have a habit of collecting rocks and a lot of debris and detritus around their camp. And because of the police and COTS and our staff working together, they were just able to move them into a trailer in Santa Rosa on the fairgrounds there and start beginning to clean up that encampment and the area around the river. So it was kind of bringing that collaboration to life. It's not just meetings that they're having, but they're really going out into the street and to see who needs help and who is the best provider for those resources. So it's a really exciting partnership that's done a lot of good this year.
We also have instances where all the debris and the rubbish that results from encampments, working with the downtown streets team and the Petaluma Police Department and the city manager's office, we're able to get debris boxes out in various parts of the community so we can use our clients and the downtown streets team to clean up some of these areas. So it's not such an eyesore in the community. I think another example of a collaboration is this cohort that I was talking about with Catholic Charities. You know, we're the two biggest homeless service providers in the county. We have to work together. We just do. And when you don't know someone, sometimes you can make assumptions, and maybe the assumptions aren't always so positive. However, when you're in a room together all day and you're learning about management or business principles, and you get to know that person that you had assumptions about, it's like, you know, you're not such a bad person. And so you're able to open the channels of communication and work better together and get things done a lot faster. And so those are just some examples of, you know, the benefits of we need to work together to solve this issue. We just do.
Yeah. Another collaboration that I don't remember if you mentioned or not, but we've just initiated a partnership with the Petaluma Family Therapy. And of course, mental health is such a significant part of the homelessness crisis. So we're finding new ways to connect our clients with services, you know, even in a COVID world where everything is by video, still being able to access some mental health care, I think is going to be really huge for our clients going forward.
Mental health is just hugely important. So the more that we can provide those types of services to our clients, the better off everyone is. You know, it's one thing to get somebody in a house. It's another thing to make sure that they're stably housed and that they're thriving. And so we want to make sure that we address the whole person. We don't want to just get you in a house. We want to make sure that there's a quality of life that you have. And so to the extent that we can provide mental health services, to the extent that we can provide case management, legal aid services, our partnership with Legal Aid of Sonoma County, so it's only going to benefit our clients.
Yeah. Chuck, I want to point out, Myron asked in the chat how many people work on the Petaluma Streets team. And of course, the Downtown Streets team is a different nonprofit than COTS. I know they have 3 staff members, but they do engage with our clients here at the Mary Isaac Center to provide services to them in addition to COTS staff. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Chuck?
Yeah, so the Downtown Streets team, they have 3 paid staff, including the director, and they have about a dozen clients that are experiencing homeless that help them do street cleanup. Some of those clients are from the Mary Isaac Center, and some of those clients are just those that are living on the streets. And they're doing really good work. So to the extent that we can partner and address issues in the city, to address hotspots, and they've had success everywhere the Downtown Streets team has gone. They're in about 12 cities, I think, throughout Northern California.
Yeah. And Chuck also, Mike Hare has raised his hand. I want to give him a chance to speak.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Chuck. In the area of long-term sustainability of COTS, are you and the COTS staff able to, I guess, maintain regular contacts with the nonprofit organizations that have supported COTS so much in the past, like Moose and Elks and Rotary clubs and churches, et cetera? Not so much to hit them up for immediate donations, but just to maintain COTS visibility with these programs.
Yeah, Mike, I think that's really important. As we're updating our strategic plan, one of the reasons that we're taking a systems approach is because we don't want to leave anything out. One of the functional areas that we know that's really important is what we call brand or branding. How are we viewed in the community? Our trustworthiness, our credibility. How do we maintain relationships with our key partners? Rotarians have been terrific partners for us. We've benefited from a couple of grants from the Rotarians this past year, for example, replacing our lockers in our dormitory downstairs. So yeah, we're very much maintaining our partnerships in the community. Churches, not so much right now. I think we have a ways to go with that, but certainly other civic clubs we are. And that's one of the things we can address better in our strategic plan.
Yeah. I would also add that as so many of these groups have been pivoting for their own meetings, it sounds like everybody's kind of doing something different, whether it's a Zoom lunch instead of the in-person lunch or some other plan. That has been kind of, that's always tricky for us to track. So if that's one thing we are hoping to ask from our community, as you are part of those groups, if you are finding that there are opportunities for COTS to be part of your Zoom luncheon or whatever virtual gathering that you're having, we would love to be there. I know our director of programs, Jules Pelican, was just at one of the Rotary Zooms recently, but everything is changing for everyone. So please keep us posted. If there's an opportunity and you'd like Chuck or one of our other staff members to come speak, we love to do that kind of thing, but everybody's changing their plans so frequently, it's been a little hard to keep track. So please keep us posted with that. Mike, did you raise your hand again or yes, go ahead.
Actually, this is Teresa.
Oh, hi.
I'd like to ask a question as well. Hi, Jamieson, how are you? Chuck, I know that due to COVID, you have space restrictions at the Mary Isaac Center, and you have had to reduce the number of people in the dorms. What has been the total impact of that? Because you also have the family center, you have some apartments that you house people. Have you had to reduce greatly the number of people that you can house? And if so, where'd they go?
Teresa, good question. So let me start with the Mary Isaac Center. So previously we had 112 beds at the Mary Isaac. Because of shelter in place, social distancing, we've had to reduce that. So now we're down to 80 beds. Yes, we had to reduce it. There's not as many people, but I think with cold and flu season coming up, I think people are going to be a whole lot safer, and it's going to be actually a much better environment. We've also taken steps to make sure that those that we can help, that we're creating a safe and sanitized environment. So for example, we've created not only cleaning protocols, but we've actually increased those cleaning protocols. As we speak, we're ordering 4 pieces of equipment that are hospital grade that purify the air and sanitize the air. They're called vortex machines, and they use ultraviolet lights. And so we're doing that to make sure that those that we can serve, we're serving them safely, as well as our staff. I think the other thing that we're doing is, because we want to have control over our cleanliness standards, those that we can serve, we're actually replacing our contractor that cleans our facility with our own janitor. So we'll have more control of that. Teresa, we've also expanded our outreach program. We now have 2 outreach staff full-time, so that we're able to get out to the community, to the encampment. So those that aren't coming into Mary Isaac, we can go out there and serve them. Right now, the reality is people just don't want to come into a shelter. It's still pretty warm. It's not cold. It's not wet. And I think because of the acuity of the people that we see here, high mental health, physical health needs, they don't stay here for very long, and they want to leave and go back out on the streets. So it's real tough. Right now, of those 80 beds, we're filling 55. I do think that within the next month that we're going to be at capacity. Yeah.
Teresa, I also just wanted to mention something about the reduction in our capacity. Of course, over the winter, we had 112 beds with winter shelter, but the news about coronavirus was trickling in a little bit before shelter in place was official. And Robin Phoenix, our shelter services manager, was very cognizant that because our community is higher risk for COVID, that we would need to start implementing procedures at some point. So instead of, being forced to change course once shelter in place was official, she actually had been planning, she knew that this would be necessary. So as people were leaving the shelter in February, she was simply not refilling those beds. So by the time shelter in place was official, we actually did have the ability to social distance with the clients we had, as opposed to needing to evict anyone. We also were able to move some of our more vulnerable clients to housing at SSU, some of the dorms there. So there wasn't any process at any point at which we had to ask people to leave. We were able to do that pretty organically by planning ahead. And I just wanted to note, Dennis Posake had a question about a potential homeless sweep tomorrow near Sid Commons and asked if we had any information about that. Chuck, is that something that you can speak to?
Dr. Posake, I don't have any information on that at all. Don't know anything about a sweep. Yeah.
No, thanks. I just, someone, I'm running for city council, and a couple supporters came up with it last night, and just thought I'd ask if you knew anything.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we've got some space for more questions. If anyone has anything specific they'd like to ask, and then we also have a few subjects that we wanted to touch on while we had everyone here. So
let me share something, Jamieson. When I'm out meeting with the community, with donors, one of the questions I frequently get is, well, how many employees do you have? How big is your budget? And what % of your budget comes from donations, contributions, government, that sort of thing? So let me just share a few numbers with you. So right now we've got about 45 full-time employees. Our budget that was approved several months ago was for $5.6 million. And of that $5.6 million, about 22% comes from government grants. So that could be state, city, county grants, etc. 28% of that budget is from foundations. So it could be various local foundations, state foundations, private foundations. 28% comes from donations and contributions. And then the rest, we've got a few percentage points from rental income and some from in-kind, all the donations that we get for the kitchen. So that makes up about 5.6 million. And so when you look at the distribution of revenue, it's fairly equal and balanced. I think if we were 80% government, maybe we might be a little worried. I know some organizations are that heavy, but I think our balance is fairly good. We also, when we do a budget, we make sure that we have a surplus. And so even though we're a nonprofit, we're still a business, which means that we have to have some sort of a positive bottom line so then we can reinvest into the organization, put money aside for that roof that we know we're going to have to repair in 10 or 15 years. And so we really operate like a business. Jamieson, were you going to say something?
I just noted that Mike and Teresa have their hand raised again, and then we have another question in the chat as well. So,
Mike, Teresa?
It's me again. I have often wondered when I go to Trader Joe's, why all those people are taking turns begging on the corner of McDowell and the entrance to the shopping center. They do seem to take turns. I actually saw a shift change yesterday when we were going past that corner. And you often see them at the Safeway shopping center as well. I have always wanted to have a flyer to hand to these people or to stop and say, for Pete's sake, go to Mary Isaac Center for food, for shelter, for help. I don't know. I realize that some of these people are coming in teams from other cities. I am very well aware that there are groups that do this. But it just astounds me, these people don't know of the services at Mary Isaac, or if they do know, why they're still out there.
Yeah, we see that a lot here next to the Mary Isaac Center where people are on the corner. Most of them are from the encampments, obviously asking for money to use for various reasons. And a lot of them just don't want to come into a shelter. They don't like rules. They don't like the four walls. They're used to being out there on their own, making their own rules. And so as hard as our outreach workers, 2 of them, go out to the streets and share all the services and programs and meals and case management that they can get here, a lot of them just prefer to be outside. Maybe that changes a little bit come winter when it gets cold and wet, but that's sadly the reality.
Sheila Baker had a question about bike trailers, some of which can convert to tents or shelters, and asked if Petaluma can accommodate overnight bike camping. And of course, we are not the city of Petaluma. They have their own issues to contend with. But is that something, Chuck, that you're aware of that's been discussed?
I'm not aware of any conversations around that. That I would have to, I can easily bring up on our Monday afternoon meetings about bike camping. Yeah.
Okay, I don't think we have any.
Any other questions? You probably wondering with this whole Paycheck Protection Program, I know a lot of organizations applied for that, relied on that. Certainly COTS did. We were in the first round of funding. We were very fortunate, thanks to our partnership with the Exchange Bank, and we were funded for $447,000. All went to payroll, and that made a significant difference for us. It was a real lifesaver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chuck, Sheila has her hand raised, so I'm going to let her unmute and ask her question if she'd like.
Go ahead, Sheila. I don't see her, but
No.
There we go. There we go. Hi, I just wanted to comment on my own question. The idea of bike packing, bike camping is seen really with, on Facebook, bike books, bike pages. And I mean, it's people kind of bragging that they went from one end of the country to the other, but actually it has potential, I think, in homeless populations. And so a person, as a former resident, former person, homeless person at Mary Isaac and also Sam Jones, I've been kind of interested in the whole spectrum of what can be done through, getting through homelessness. And so a friend put on his Facebook page a beautiful trailer that was converted to a living situation that would very much accommodate anyone overnight and keep objects, personal possessions inside rather than strung out all over the place. And I think it would be great to reach out to some bicycle groups like Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition, who might be familiar with this, and in one of your meetings. And also maybe the downtown street team might be able to add something to it. So I would like to see this explored. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll definitely bring that up at our next Monday meeting.
Thank you.
Chuck, while we have a little bit of time, I also wanted to maybe talk about our strategic planning process and how that's being revisited this year, and how that might be rooted in your observations at COTS over the last couple of years as CEO.
Yeah, so we have COTS has a current strategic plan. It's 5 years. It's it goes from 2018 to 2023. We realized that with COVID, the consequences, we needed to probably do things differently, and that needed to start with our strategic plan. Because the plan is all about direction. It's all about strategy, is all about differentiation. We do have competitors, so how do we want to differentiate ourselves from our competitors? And so we formed a group of 13 people, 7 staff, different parts of the organization, and 6 board members. We meet every 2 weeks, and we started with our mission and our vision statement. Is this still relevant for today and for tomorrow? We know getting somebody in the house is important. We also know that with Sonoma County supply and demand, the lack of affordable housing, the cost of housing, it's a struggle for our clients. And so we're looking at our mission statement, our vision statement. We're also looked at our values. Again, I mentioned earlier that diversity is important to us. And so we want to make sure that we mention that in our values, because values are about how you behave, how you make decisions, how you move forward, how you treat people. And so that was important to us. And again, we're doing it a little bit differently in that we're taking a very systems approach to strategic plan because we don't want to miss anything. We know financial sustainability is important. We know our brand is important. We know our social impact and our programs are important. And we can't do any of this unless we have the right people and the right culture. And so we're really looking at all of that within our strategic plan and coming up with goals and objectives. Now we're trying to make this simple because the simpler, the better. Then we can really pay attention and execute on the plan. So that's kind of how we're approaching it. We've been at it for about 2.5 months. Our goal is to be completed, believe it or not, next month. And so in 2 weeks, we'll be presenting a draft to our board of directors. And the goal is to share this with the community on our website.
I also want to point out that part of this process has been involving staff at all levels of COTS, so that we have board members, we have leadership staff, and then people who are doing some of the frontline work, so that we're incorporating every viewpoint and making sure that our goals as a leadership team are the same as the goals of people who are interacting with the staff or interacting with clients on a daily basis.
We want to make sure that when we set our goals and objectives that we push, we be aggressive, but we not be so unrealistic that it doesn't make any sense at all. So it's nice to have these checks and balances with frontline staff that say, you know, I just don't think that's realistic or that's possible. So we pull back a little bit, we rethink it through, and then we move forward. And we also know that we're going to have to do this every single year because our operating environment is just very different today. And so we have to be very flexible.
Yeah. So we've been going for a little more than half an hour, and I want to keep this to about 40 minutes because I know everyone else has places to be and possibly work to get back to. Are there any other questions that you want to see addressed today, or anything else we should speak to? Great. And Chuck, I wanted to throw one last question out to you before we go.
Sure.
What help do we need as an organization from our community this year? You know, what is helpful to us from our community as we try to sustain our work over the next year?
I think as we go forward in these uncertain times, I just think to really be an advocate, a supporter, and ambassador for COTS. Right now, it's really hard to say, listen, we could really use your help volunteering when we're not quite ready for that. We want to make sure that everybody's safe. That's why we're having a Zoom meeting. We practice social distancing, et cetera. So volunteering may not be totally realistic, but for you to be an advocate in the community for COTS, an ambassador would really be important to us to continue to be our supporters.
Yeah. Yes, and if you haven't RSVP'd for the COTS Hour, we are still hosting it this year. It's a virtual event, and you can find information on our website about it. But we're also having one more virtual town hall before then. It's going to be in November. And of course, you probably all saw the information in the email that you responded to attend this town hall. But we'll send an update as a reminder as well. But thank you everybody for attending. And if there are no more questions, I think that's everything for today. Chuck, did you want to say anything as we wrap up?
Yeah, and if you have any questions, if you want to get more into the detail of any of this stuff, you know how to get a hold of me. You can send me an email at cfernandez@cots.org, and I'll spend all the time you like digging into some of the details of the business of COTS. I'm more than happy to do that. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for attending.
Yes, thank you everybody. We so appreciate your time, and have a great rest of your day.